this is my review of Slime Diaries. Okay, so in this episode, Tempest has its first big snowfall for the winter, and long story short, the citizens of Tempest not only do some cleanup because snow is very because I don't think I need to explain to you why snow is kind of problematic when trying to do stuff. But in addition to that, Rimuru and his friends just kind of screw around and playing in the snow for the day. So it starts off with Fuse and the other adventurers pointing out that. Kind of arguing about whether or not they should stay and that they should have been prepared for every eventuality, but snow is coming. So yeah, it's their first big snowfall for the winter, and they're wondering about whether they have to stay because obviously they're now snowed in and they can't really leave. And they're curious about whether or not they should continue to impose on Rimuru. But Rimuru, who's just chilling on his porch, hearing all of this, quickly realizes that they're just kind of making excuses to actually just stay in Tempest, and he ultimately tells them that it's okay because he saw right through it. And they all cheer, and Erin even remarks that she's going to go visit the hot spring a couple dozen times. At which point Rimuru remarks that the winter has finally come. So yeah. But in case it starts off it goes into the next morning where the snow has already come, and it's very heavy snow. It's kind of sort of up to the windows on the second story building. So yeah, Rimuru pokes his head out, sees how high the snow is, and decides that since it's now completely fresh snow and he hasn't done it since he was a little kid, he decides the best course of action is to jump out the window and belly flop into the snow, which is something that he loved doing as a kid but hasn't done recently. And then Great Stage chimes in not to do exactly what Rimuru just did, pointing out that most people jumping out of a second story window, especially if they can't survive the impact like Rimuru can, they probably shouldn't do it. So because they could seriously hurt themselves. But in case it then cuts to everybody shoveling snow, and Shuna is wandering around town because she can't find Rimuru and has no idea where he is. And even asks Rigard about it, who also has no idea, but promises to keep an eye out for him and let her know when he eventually finds him. And as it turns out, he didn't have to look very hard because in a continuation from the last scene, Rimuru actually got stuck in the snow because it was deeper than he thought. So he wound up getting stuck in a slime form and kind of became an ice cube ish shape. So when Rigard eventually uncovers him, he's curious about what happened, and Rimuru just explains that the snow was deeper than he thought. But after that little escapade, Rimuru then proceeds to decide to tell everybody in the immediate vicinity that he needs their help shoveling the snow, and decides to do that via the Watchtower, which is this massive structure that Rimuru apparently has and apparently uses for like major announcements. And he decides to use it to actually broadcast an entire signal across the entire nation, which is what it's designed to do. It uses a giant PA system, which is just sends out an entire signal across all Tempest so that everybody can hear announcements. As far as I know, Rimuru doesn't use this in the main anime. It's only ever appears here, but he uses it to basically tell everybody to bring warm clothes and shovels, and to make it to the main building so that they can actually work on shoveling snow. And during this entire scene, we actually see a montage of people and how they're actually deciding to spend their snow day, as it were. And they continue to gather and shovel snow. And while he's doing that, and while he's waiting for everybody to show up, Rimuru actually talks to Shuna and Shion about how he's happy that the snow is actually gathered, and about how it's always been fun activities, but that he points out that it would be kind of dangerous and irresponsible if people played in the snow and if they couldn't work, which is why he called everybody to actually come in with shovels and actually start digging up snow. And Shion and Shuna remark that they both remark their ideas about how they used to play in the snow as a kid, and Shion even remarks that when she was little, she used to just kind of wander into the field into the fields barefoot when it was snowy, and that she would actually kind of just play in the snow for hours on end when she was little. But Rimuru kind of takes joy in that, pointing out that they're very similar and that they used to do that as well, and that he used to do that as well when he was younger. And case in point, he actually did it. But Shuna points out the danger of their actions, pointing out that. But Shuna actually remarks that that's actually kind of dangerous and points out that Shion was actually a little bit reckless when she actually went to play out in the snow, pointing out that she would sometimes wander into the snow and get stuck, and similar to how Rimuru used to, and they point out that she could easily become frostbitten if they aren't careful. And while Rimuru quickly realizes that maybe he shouldn't be belly flopping into the snow while he's doing a thing, while he's waiting. And pointing out that's clear that Shion isn't the most responsible person in the world, and she probably shouldn't be doing that either. Milim then barges in through the window and remarks that she just spent that she's back to play in the snow, but then everybody proceeds to tell her not to jump out of the window. But she tells them that she'll be okay because Demon Lords apparently don't get cold. At which point Rimuru decides he's not going to jump in the snow anymore. But in case, everybody then proceeds to gather at the main building, and Rimuru then tells them that they all need to work on shoveling snow to actually get everything cleaned up so they can actually continue to work and use the streets safely. And they all agree. However, Yum then proceeds to give some of his grievances to Rimuru, pointing out that he's been doing a lot of handyman related stuff lately. And while he agreed to be a champion, he didn't sign up to work to kind of be the handyman for the city. At which point Rimuru reveals that it was actually Haku's idea that Rimuru give him a change of pace, but if he loves his training so much that he could probably continue doing that instead of actually working, and he fully understands. And Haku just kind of looms in the frame. It's just this big terrifying shade of thing. And Yum and the others quickly decide that maybe shoveling some snow isn't so bad after all. They become unusually enthusiastic about shoveling snow. Case in point, Shuna brings them some tea and asks them if they're staying warm enough, and they merely remark that they love snow, even though it's clear that they're just doing that because they're terrified of Haku. So Shuna just decides that it would be best to just leave them be for the time being. And then proceeds to bring Rimuru some tea, pointing out that they seem to be very diligent, hard workers. And Rimuru just agrees, and that clearly they've learned not to mess with Haku, and points out that they're definitely very diligent. But in case, as Rimuru is actually shoveling snow, some of the children of the village actually ask him to have a snowball fight with them, and he agrees and starts lightly chucking snowballs at them, which they enjoy. But then Gabta, Shion, and Milim all get involved in the snowball fight, and they're a little rough with it. Gabta throws a notably sizable snowball at Rimuru, and it visibly hurts him a little bit. But then as Shion is gonna throw her snowball, Milim shows up with a massive one, just knocks Rimuru to the floor, and he's unable to move for a bit. But then when he does get back up, he then proceeds to retaliate with his icicle shotgun and starts chasing after them that way. And they tell him to use actual snow instead of ice. So yeah, they kind of learned their lesson pretty quickly, not to throw massive snowballs at Rimuru's head and almost potentially kill him, because he was just running around for fun and they took it too far. But in any case, as they're all working, we actually get a scene of Sui and Suka together, and Suka has actually made little snow goons in the shape of herself and Sui. And she's very proud of it, and also points out that she feels like it's a little bit inappropriate to be doing that, since she's supposed to be this solemn soldier. But the fact of the matter is that she's kind of trying to cope with her feelings for Sui, and this is one of the ways she decides to do it. However, Sui notices that she's actually made snowmen in their likeness, and either because he's oblivious or because he decides to toy with her, he then asks her what she's actually making, and she merely responds that they're targets, as she puts them, She denies the fact that she made them to actually be little snowmen. And Sui, as I said, either because he's completely oblivious to what actually is going on, or because he decides to mess with her, decides that he's actually going to take them up on her offer and decides to make them into target dummies, as she suggested. And Suka is just kind of a little bit thrown for a loop because she has no idea what to do, because now her precious snowmen are being used for target practice, and she's a little upset by that. But in any case, it then cuts back to Benimaru, who has decided to actually help clear the snow, and the only way he knows how, by using his powerful destruction magic to make a giant fireball and just breach and clear the entire main streets of Tempest using his fireballs. And everybody remarks how good he is and how good he is at it and how dependable he is. And while Benimaru is very pleased about receiving the compliments, deep down he just realizes that he doesn't mind doing this kind of work. He knows he's supposed to be a soldier and that he's the general of their entire army, but he doesn't really mind the peaceful moments where he's able to just make throw fireballs and just clear out snow for Rimuru, because he's proud to do it. But also there's a really funny scene where Ranga assembles the other dire wolves to actually help the dire wolves to help him do reconnaissance, pointing out that they're unparalleled at running on snow and that this is actually the perfect environment for them. And they then proceed to get ready to go out and do reconnaissance, but they easily become distracted by the snow and start playing in it like the little dogs that they are at heart, and it's very cute. And when they eventually come back to Rimuru remarks that they're tired, and they point out that even the quest with snow was too much for them. But in any case, as all of this is it then cuts to Trini, who's actually making a little snow fairy. And Rimuru asks her if this is normal, about how normally if winter is actually dangerous for dryads, and she actually remarks that it is indeed not. As she points out, it's just a cycle in nature and while the trees look like they're sleeping in the winter, they're actually not. They just lose their leaves and are conserving their strength for when spring comes again. And that even the seeds, while it is cold, they're completely fine. And that they'll ultimately wait for spring again. At which point Gabto makes a bit of a lewd remark about how he's waiting for her spring to come again, and she retaliates by creating a giant, by just kind of spotting a giant tree in the middle of Tempest and just leaving him there until he learns his lesson. And obviously Rimuru isn't too happy with her, pointing out that A, she shouldn't be growing giant trees in the middle of his city state, and B, she shouldn't have done it anyway, because now Gabto is stuck up there with no way of getting down. But in any case, it then cuts to Milim, who has since been making a giant little snowman, a giant snowman in the shape of Rimuru. And she asks Rimuru to turn around while she's finishing it. But once she's done, she then tells Rimuru he can open his eyes, and after seeing the giant sculpture that she had worked so hard on to make in the likeness of Rimuru, he concludes that while she is a little brash, she does like him at least a little bit, and does care for him as much as he does for her, as their best friends. And at which point Rimuru decides to mention that it actually reminds him of a snow hut, and how while he never actually got to make one himself, he remarks that they were these little dwellings that people got to live in and make mochi in, and remarks that, and again, that he never got to do it, and hopes that he will be able to one day. At which point Milim decides to personally make that wish come true, and decides to hollow out her giant snow Rimuru that she made to make it into a tree hut, into a snow hut. And while Rimuru ultimately remarks that she doesn't like him as much as we initially thought, since she was willing to destroy her snow hut, to her little snow goon thing, to actually make a snow hut in Rimuru's likeness. It ultimately winds up working out, and they even recruit and even some of the children come to play with the snow hut and actually help clean it out and sculpt it. And by the time they're done with it, it basically looks like a palace inside. It just looks really nice. It looks like a little snow palace. It's got a chandelier hanging from the ceiling. There's little light fixtures made of ice in the little cubby holes. It's got detailed paneling on the inside somehow. And there's a giant table in the center. And as they're working on putting on the finishing touches, Shuna actually walks in with the mochi and pardons herself for intruding, but ultimately remarks that she has the mochi that Rimuru asked for, and that ultimately they should be careful because once it's cooked, it'll be very hot. But they then proceed to cook it and eat it, and Milim remarks that it's very good, and also Shuna just kind of acts as a proud parent to everybody in the building, because it's mostly children and Milim. At which point Rimuru finally takes happy joy in the fact that he's finally made a lifelong wish come true. So yeah, happy little moment. But as it turns out, things are not so cheery in the city of Tempest because as it turns out, Geld doesn't like the winter all that much, and for good reason. If you guys aren't familiar with or otherwise don't remember his backstory, he and his tribe used to wander a lot before his dad became the orc disaster. And he actually remembers a real very sad story from when they used to wander around, about how while they were wandering in the dead of winter to their next location, one of the orcs actually died, and they couldn't really do anything for him. All they could really do was pray for him and take the supplies that he was carrying, and then give him a proper burial as the snow kind of put him to rest for them. And Geld remarks that snow is probably the most dangerous killer of all, pointing out that if not taken care of properly, it could easily kill somebody. It could easily cause somebody to die from being frozen. This is especially important because as he points out, the older and the weak and children are actually the most at risk of succumbing to the cold. Case in point, he's currently caring after 5 little goblin kids, including the girl who's been following him around for several episodes at this time. And once he decides to call it a day and bring them back to the village, where they all kind of curl up and bundle up and get ready to go back inside. And he makes doubly sure to make sure that none of them are lost. At which point he points out that he won't let winter come to the village and hurt any of the people he cares about. So yeah, this series is mostly goofy antics, but there is a little bit of a solemn side to this series as well, because case in point, Geld, he doesn't like the winter because he's personally seen it kill somebody he was close with. So he knows from firsthand that winter can be dangerous. And that actually just plays into a bit of his backstory about how he's kind of a solemn and soft-spoken dude. He cares about the people he's close to, and he doesn't want any of them to get hurt. And I can kind of respect that. But then it goes right back into antics again, where Aaron is with the other main girls in the hot spring, and she ultimately remarks the hot spring is very nice. And also during this entire sequence, Milim is trying to use Rimuru as a kickboard. Shuna begins to explain that the hot spring actually has rejuvenating properties thanks to how Rimuru has actually decided to design it. And points out that it actually makes them look younger and more beautiful the longer they sit in the bath. And Aaron ultimately remarks that doesn't seem very fair. At which point Shion remarks that it was actually Rimuru's idea to actually make it, and that they're actually planning to make it into a rejuvenation care type thing using the bath water in the hot spring. At which point Rimuru and Milim actually surface, and Rimuru explains how they actually made the hot springs. So because up to this point it has largely gone unexplained how they actually made it. And as it turns out, Rimuru and Sui back in the day were the only two people to have Shadow Sneak as one of their skills. So what they did was they actually used Shadow Sneak to make a pipeline from the mountains where the source for the hot spring is, all the way back to the village. However, the problem being with that is that it took a lot of hard work between the two of them to actually get the water from the mountain to the spring, and ultimately decided to make a communal hot spring because they quickly realized that they couldn't directly pipe it to create direct pipelines to everybody's house, so they decided to just make a single hot spring that everybody can use. However, as he's explaining that, it's actually revealed that so that not every house has a hot spring. There is one of note, and as it turns out, Sui actually used his Shadow Sneak to actually make another pipeline to piggy off of the main one, and he actually has a hot spring at his house, which is kind of funny and goofy. But in case, as everybody's actually cleaning up in the hot spring, everybody remarks about how Yum and his party actually remark about how they were hard at work today, and that they're probably going to be sore in the morning. At which point Yum remarks a very strange comment Rimuru made while he was shoveling snow about how Yum is definitely young, and that how when he was younger he used to get sore all the time, and how ultimately he would just go until he felt something later in his bones, and by the time he was done, he was practically dead. So he knows from personal experience that Yama needs to take himself carefully. And the rest of the party is quickly realized that Rimuru is actually a lot older than he looks. And in case in point, when he comes out of the bath with the girls, Rimuru ultimately complains about Milim using him as a body sponge. But she remarks that he works up a great lather, but he's ultimately upset that they shouldn't try to do that again. And they quickly realize that though he looks cute, he's 30. The dude was almost like what? He was in his late 30s when he died and reincarnated. So yeah, he's very much an old man. He's a lot older than people think he is. This kind of just clues everybody in that Rimuru's a lot older than he looks. But in case there is one little cutaway where, as it turns out, Milim has actually been spying on Rimuru and his party for apparently a while. We haven't actually seen. We only recently saw her in the second season, but apparently she has been working with Clayman for a while, albeit against her will, and has actually been trying to spy on Rimuru and his friends from a distance to actually learn more about him, so she can actually ingratiate herself into society easily without any problems. While her main mission is to try and do so without picking up the suspicion of Milim, every time she goes to actually check on them, because Milim is kind of best friends with Rimuru at this point, she keeps seeing Milim in her little scrying crystal that she has. In her crystal ball, and ultimately remarks that no matter how many times she tries, she's ultimately going to run into Milim regardless. So, and ultimately remarks that Clayman is actually going to punish her again. But in any case, it then cuts to Rimuru at the end of the day, where all the sun has gone down and it's just peaceful and everybody's asleep. And he ultimately decides to lament on how peaceful it is with everybody gone. And remarks that while it was busy during the day, at night it has a completely different feel to it. Remarking that it's actually a lot more peaceful, and he ultimately can't help but take in the beauty of the snow and hopes that it will snow again soon. But then it has one last little funny scene where everybody's once again shoveling snow, and Rigard once again finds Rimuru buried in the snow. When Rigard asks why he's buried in the snow again, Rimuru basically just remarks that the same thing just happened. He jumped in the snow, because he got so overtaken by the sheer beauty of it and how quiet it was, and nobody found him until the morning. So he's just been buried in the snow for probably overnight, which is a very funny scene. But yeah, it's a cute little episode. It's a cute little episode that just shows Rimuru screwing around in the snow with his friends, and also trying to keep the snow cleaned up so that they can actually work. But in any case, yeah, that's my review of Slime Diaries. What you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. And also, be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that I'm always saying thanks. So be sure to check those out in the description below as well. Also, be sure to check out my Twitch, because I'm streaming regularly over there every Sunday at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time. If you guys want to go check that out, unless it's a major holiday, I will be streaming over there. So be sure to go check that out. We've been streaming Miitopia for the past, I don't know, a couple of weeks now. I'm probably going to keep going with it until I finish it, but yeah, go check that out. It's a lot of fun. I've been getting a couple of requests for people sending in their Miis, so be sure to go send those. Be sure to go send those to me if you want to actually see your Miis featured in Miitopia. So go check that out. And finally, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So if you want to see more of what you like, or try something completely different, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!